The morning I discovered my entire world had crumbled started like any other Tuesday in our quiet neighborhood of Cedar Falls. I was preparing breakfast for my granddaughter Lily when I heard the unmistakable sound of dresser drawers being yanked open and slammed shut from upstairs. The violent thuds echoed through our century-old craftsman house like gunshots in the pre-dawn silence. At 69, I'd developed an intuition about trouble that had served me well during my 43 years as a high school mathematics teacher. The same instinct that helped me catch students cheating on exams and identify kids struggling at home was now screaming warnings I desperately wanted to ignore. I set down Lily's favorite purple bowl and climbed the narrow wooden staircase, each step creaking under my weight like a countdown to disaster. My son Tyler's bedroom door stood wide open, revealing chaos I'd never seen in his usually organized space. Clothes were being hurled into two large duffel bags with the frantic desperation of someone fleeing a burning building. No careful folding, no consideration for wrinkles, just grab and stuff. His work laptop sat open on the unmade bed, displaying multiple browser windows that flickered with activity I couldn't identify from the doorway. "Going somewhere?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the knot forming in my stomach. Tyler didn't look up from his packing frenzy. Business conference, last-minute opportunity. The lie hung between us like a toxic cloud. Tyler worked as a network administrator for our local school district. In 7 years on the job, he'd never attended a business conference. He barely attended the mandatory staff meetings. "For how long?" I pressed, stepping into the room. "Not sure yet. Could be a week, could be longer." He grabbed toiletries from the dresser with such force that he knocked over the framed photo of Rebecca holding newborn Lily. The glass shattered against the hardwood floor, but Tyler stepped over the broken pieces like they were worthless debris. My heart clenched watching him dismiss the image so callously. That photograph had occupied the same spot for 12 years, ever since Rebecca died from complications during Lily's birth. Tyler used to trace Rebecca's face with his finger every night before bed, whispering promises to take care of their daughter. Now he walked past his wife's shattered memory like it meant nothing. "Tyler, stop!" I moved deeper into the room, glass crunching under my slippers. "What's really happening here? What's so urgent that you're packing like the house is on fire?" He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there chilled me to my core. Nothing. No guilt. No sadness, no connection to the family he was abandoning. Just cold determination mixed with something that looked disturbingly like relief. "I'm leaving, Dad. I should have done this years ago." The words hit me like a physical assault. I've been trapped in this life for too long. Trapped in this house, trapped in this routine, trapped raising a kid who isn't even really mine anymore. The casual cruelty of his statement left me speechless. 12 years of raising his daughter while he worked through his grief. More than a decade of being the father Lily needed while Tyler slowly retreated into his computer screens and late-night activities I'd chosen not to question. Over a decade of holding our fractured family together with my teacher's pension and grandfather's love, and he called it a trap. "What about Lily?" I managed to whisper. "She's better off with you. She always has been." Tyler zipped the first duffel bag with brutal finality. The sound seemed to echo through the entire house, probably reaching Lily's room where my granddaughter was hopefully still sleeping peacefully. "You've been her real parent since day one. Now it's official. You can't just abandon your daughter. She needs her father." "I'm not abandoning her. I'm leaving her with the person who actually raised her." Tyler hefted both bags from the bed. "You've been playing house with her while I paid the bills. Well, now you can figure out how to pay them yourself." My blood turned to ice water. What does that mean exactly? But Tyler was already heading downstairs, dragging his bags behind him like a man escaping prison. I followed, my heart hammering against my ribs, slippers catching on the worn carpet runner. In the living room, Lily sat cross-legged on our faded floral couch, braiding friendship bracelets from colorful thread. She looked up when we entered, taking in her father's luggage and my panicked expression with those intelligent green eyes that reminded me so much of Rebecca. "Going somewhere, Dad?" Her voice carried the careful neutrality of a child who'd learned not to expect too much from adult promises. Tyler paused at the front door, his hand on the brass knob. For just a moment I thought I saw his resolve waver as he looked at his daughter. Lily had grown tall for her age, with Rebecca's delicate features and quick smile, but she'd inherited Tyler's analytical mind and quiet intensity. "I need some time away, kiddo. Grandpa will take care of you." "For how long?" Lily asked, still working on her bracelet with steady fingers. "I don't know yet. Maybe a long time." Lily nodded once, like she was filing away information for later analysis. "Okay." The simple acceptance in my granddaughter's voice shattered something inside my chest. No tears, no protests, no desperate pleas for her father to stay. Just quiet resignation, as if she'd been expecting this abandonment her entire life. Tyler opened the front door, letting October's bitter wind rush into our warm house. "I'll call when I get settled." "Where are you going?" I demanded. "Somewhere I can finally breathe again." The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than if he'd slammed it with all his strength. Through our front window, I watched him load his bags into his blue Ford pickup and drive away from the house where his daughter had spent her entire life. The taillights disappeared around the corner, and I realized I was holding my breath. Lily and I stood in the sudden silence of our living room. The antique grandfather clock in the corner ticked steadily. The furnace hummed to life with a mechanical sigh. Outside, a car engine faded into the distance until there was nothing left but the sound of our own breathing. "Is he coming back?" Lily asked, still focused on her bracelet. I wanted to lie, to protect her from the truth I'd seen in Tyler's eyes. But Lily was too intelligent for comfortable lies, too perceptive to be fooled by false hope. "I don't think so, sweetheart." She tied off her bracelet with careful precision and set it aside with her other craft supplies. Then she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her young face. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of steely determination that seemed far too mature for a 12-year-old. "Grandpa, don't worry. I'll handle this." The words were so unexpected, delivered with such quiet confidence that I almost laughed. Handle what? She was 12 years old. What could she possibly handle about her father abandoning us with God knows what financial disaster waiting to unfold? But something in her tone made me pause. There was no childish bravado in her voice, no empty comfort meant to make me feel better. Just calm certainty, like she knew something I didn't. "What do you mean, Lily?" She gathered her craft supplies and headed toward the stairs. "I need to check our bank accounts first, then we'll know exactly what we're dealing with." Bank accounts. My 12-year-old granddaughter was talking about checking bank accounts like she was the family accountant. "Lily, wait," but she was already climbing the stairs to her room, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt enormous and empty, with questions I couldn't answer and a future I couldn't see. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to our channel. We're building a community of people who know that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest power. Let me tell you something about that morning after Tyler left. I sat in my kitchen for 3 hours just staring at the empty coffee cup he'd left on the counter. 3 hours of silence so thick it felt like drowning. I kept expecting him to walk back through that door with an apology and an explanation that would make sense of everything. But deep down I knew he wasn't coming back. Not that day, not ever. You have to understand, Tyler hadn't always been the man who walked out on his daughter. When Rebecca was alive, he was different. Attentive, responsible, completely devoted to his little family. I remember him staying up all night when baby Lily had colic, walking the floors of the same house, singing Rebecca's favorite lullabies until both he and the baby finally fell asleep in the rocking chair by the window. After Rebecca died, something fundamental broke inside Tyler. Not just grief. I understood grief. I'd lost my wife, Lily's grandmother, 5 years before she was born. But Tyler's grief turned inward, became this consuming darkness that slowly ate away at the man I'd raised. He started staying late at work, not because he had to, but because coming home meant facing the reality that Rebecca wasn't there. Lily was just a baby then, completely dependent on us for everything. And gradually, without either of us really noticing it happening, I became her primary parent. Tyler provided financially, but emotionally, he checked out. He'd come home, eat dinner in silence, disappear into his room with his laptop. On weekends, he'd take long drives alone, sometimes not coming back until late Sunday night. I told myself it was temporary, grief processing. He just needed time to heal and then he'd step up as Lily's father. But months turned into years and Tyler remained a ghost in his own home, present physically but absent in every way that mattered. Now, back to the story. That first night without Tyler, sleep was impossible. I lay in my bed listening to the house settle around me, every creak and groan magnified in the darkness. I kept replaying our last conversation, looking for signs I'd missed, warnings that might have prepared me for what was coming. The truth is, there had been signs. Subtle changes in Tyler's behavior over the past few months that I'd attributed to work stress. The way he'd quickly close his laptop when I entered a room. The mysterious phone calls he'd take outside on the porch, speaking in hushed tones. The credit card statements he'd started intercepting from the mail before I could see them. I'd noticed him working late more often, claiming the school district's computer systems needed updates and maintenance. But now I wondered if those late nights had been spent with Carmen, planning their escape from the life we'd built together. There had been other things, too. New clothes that seemed expensive for his salary. A sudden interest in cryptocurrency and investment opportunities he'd never mentioned before. Questions about my retirement accounts that I'd answered innocently, not realizing I was providing information that would be used against me. The most painful realization was that Lily had probably noticed these changes long before I did. Children are naturally observant about adult behavior, especially when they're used to being overlooked. While I was giving Tyler the benefit of the doubt, assuming the best about his intentions, Lily had been quietly documenting his suspicious activities. Around 1:30 a.m. I heard it, the soft rhythmic clicking of computer keys coming from Lily's room. The typing continued with steady, purposeful rhythm, far too focused for a child who should be sleeping. I slipped out of bed, wrapped my bathrobe around my shoulders, and padded down the hallway in my slippers. Light seeped from beneath her bedroom door, and the typing continued without pause. I knocked gently. "Lily, it's past midnight, sweetheart." "Come in, Grandpa." I pushed open the door to find Lily sitting at her small white desk, still fully dressed, surrounded by notebooks and printed papers. Her laptop screen glowed with what looked like multiple windows displaying data streams I couldn't begin to understand. Empty energy drink cans stood like soldiers beside her keyboard. "What are you doing up so late, honey?" "Research." She gestured to the papers scattered across her desk without taking her eyes off the screen. "I've been going through Dad's digital footprints for the past 4 hours." Digital footprints. I moved closer, trying to make sense of the documents spread before me. Bank statements, credit reports, what looked like email printouts, all bearing our family name and information I'd never seen before. "Lily, where did you get these?" "Dad isn't very careful with his passwords. He uses the same one for everything. Rebecca, 2011, the year they got married." She clicked something on her laptop and a new window opened showing what appeared to be Tyler's email account. "It's not really hacking if he left the door wide open." My stomach dropped to my feet. "You accessed your father's email?" "Technically, I just logged in with credentials he left lying around, but Grandpa..." Lily's voice carried a weight no child should bear. "You need to sit down. What I found is much worse than we thought." I sank into the small chair beside her desk, my legs suddenly unsteady. "How much worse?" Lily handed me a printed bank statement with my name at the top. I stared at the numbers, blinking hard to make sure I was reading correctly. This couldn't be right. "My savings account shows 23, I whispered. "It's accurate. Dad didn't just take some money when he left. He's been systematically draining our accounts for months." Lily's young voice carried a maturity that broke my heart. "Every week, small transfers that wouldn't trigger automatic alerts. He's been bleeding us dry slowly, hoping we wouldn't notice until it was too late. The paper trembled in my hands. $23. My life savings accumulated over 4 decades of teaching, reduced to pocket change. What about Lily's college fund? Lily handed me another statement, her jaw tight with anger. The education savings account that should have contained $38,000 showed a balance of 0. No. The word came out as a whisper. No, that money was protected. It was in a special account with restrictions. Not anymore. Lily pulled up another document on her screen. 5 weeks ago, Dad transferred the entire amount to his personal checking account. Then he moved it somewhere else entirely. I felt like I was drowning in numbers and betrayal. Somewhere else? That's what took me so long to figure out. Lily's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced ease. Dad's been working with someone. Her name is Carmen Rodriguez. She works at Premier Trust Financial downtown. She pulled up a social media profile showing a woman in her early 30s with long dark hair and a professional smile. Vacation photos from expensive resorts. Inspirational quotes about living your best life. Pictures of designer handbags and jewelry. She's his girlfriend? I asked weakly. More than that. She's been helping him move money around, create new accounts, even apply for loans using our personal information. Lily's jaw tightened with an anger that looked startling on her young face. Grandpa, they've been planning this for at least 6 months. The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of Lily's desk, trying to process what she was telling me. What kind of loans? Lily clicked to another document. A $35,000 personal loan using your name and social security number. A $20,000 credit card application using my social security number with a fake age listed as 28. They forged all the signatures using samples from old documents. Identity theft. My own son had stolen my identity and his daughter's identity to fund his escape with another woman. How do you know all this? I whispered. I've been monitoring Dad's behavior for weeks. The secret phone calls where he'd go outside to talk. The way he'd slam his laptop closed when I walked into the room. How he'd get text messages that made him smile in ways he never smiled at us. Lily minimized one window and opened another. I started paying attention because something felt wrong in this house. Then I learned how to see what he was hiding. Learned how? YouTube tutorials mostly. Online forums about computer security. It's not that hard once you understand the basics. She pulled up a browser bookmarks folder titled Investigation Tools containing dozens of links to cybersecurity resources. When you suspect someone you live with is lying to you, you learn pretty quickly how to find the truth. I stared at my granddaughter, this child I'd raised from birth, and realized I'd been living with a stranger. While I'd been helping her with homework and packing her lunches, she'd been teaching herself digital detective skills. Lily, what they've done to us. This is serious criminal activity. I know. That's why I documented everything. Her voice was calm and steady. Every transfer, every forged document, every fraudulent application. I have proof of all of it. She opened a folder on her desktop labeled Evidence Package. My breath caught in my throat. Dozens of files, screenshots, bank records, email conversations between Tyler and Carmen, discussing their plans in explicit detail. They hadn't just been planning to steal from us. They were going to disappear together and start over with our money. Carmen had been researching apartments in different cities. They'd discussed changing their names legally once they were settled. They'd even talked about what story they'd tell people about their past. We're planning, Lily corrected, reading my expression. Their plans hit a few snags today. Before I could ask what she meant, her laptop chimed with an email notification. Lily glanced at the screen and smiled, a smile that sent chills down my spine. That would be Dad's bank calling about the fraud alert I filed this afternoon. You filed a fraud alert? I filed several things today. Lily leaned back in her chair with satisfaction. Fraud alerts, identity theft reports, complaints to the State Banking Commission, reports to the Federal Trade Commission. She paused, counting on her fingers. sent some very interesting information to Carmen's employer about her unauthorized use of client accounts to facilitate money laundering. My mouth fell open. Lily, what have you done? I protected us. Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing a school project. Dad thought he could steal from us and disappear without consequences. He thought we were too trusting and helpless to fight back. The laptop chimed again. Lily glanced at the new email, and her smile widened. And that would be confirmation that Carmen Rodriguez has been suspended from Premier Trust Financial pending investigation into client account irregularities and potential criminal activity. I felt dizzy. While I'd been crying myself to sleep and wondering how we'd survive, my 12-year-old granddaughter had been waging digital warfare against the people who'd betrayed us. How did you learn to do all this?
The same internet that taught Dad how to commit financial fraud taught me how to stop it. Lily closed her laptop and looked at me directly. Grandpa, they didn't just steal our money. They tried to steal our future. Someone had to make sure there were consequences. I looked around Lily's room with new eyes, at the organized desk, the neat stacks of evidence, the calm determination of a child who'd been forced to become her own protector and mine. What happens now? Lily stood up and began organizing her papers into careful piles. Now we wait for the system to work. Dad's accounts are frozen, Carmen's career is over, and their apartment hunting in Phoenix has been complicated by the fact that their loan applications keep getting flagged for fraud. She paused, looking younger for a moment despite everything she'd accomplished. And tomorrow we start figuring out how to rebuild what they destroyed. The next morning, I woke to the smell of pancakes and coffee. I found Lily in the kitchen, fully dressed for school, 2 plates set on our small breakfast table with fresh orange juice poured into our best glasses. You cooked breakfast? You need to eat something substantial. We both need our strength for what's coming next. She flipped a perfect golden pancake with the careful attention of someone much older than her years. I've been thinking about our recovery strategy all night. I sat down, marveling at how surreal this felt. My granddaughter discussing financial recovery while making breakfast like other kids might talk about their weekend plans. What kind of recovery strategy? Lily pulled out a manila folder and opened it beside her plate. I spent the rest of last night digging deeper into Carmen's background. What I discovered is going to help us, but it's also pretty disturbing. She handed me what looked like a police report from another state. Carmen Rodriguez has been running financial scams for years. This is from when she worked at Pinnacle Investment Group in Denver before moving here to Cedar Falls. I scanned the report, my coffee growing cold as I read. Embezzlement, unauthorized access to client accounts, falsified investment statements, elderly financial abuse. She'd been arrested and charged, but the case was dropped when she agreed to pay partial restitution and resign quietly. Then she moved here and got hired at Premier Trust Financial. They never ran a proper background check. Lily turned to another page. But here's the really interesting part. Carmen has been stealing from her current clients too. She pulled out more documents, bank statements, investment portfolios, transfer records. Lily, where did you get these? Carmen uses the same lazy password strategy as Dad. Once I figured out her patterns, I could access her work accounts. She paused, reading my shocked expression. I know it sounds bad, but Grandpa, she's been stealing from vulnerable elderly people your age who trusted her with their retirement savings. My hands shook as I looked through the evidence. Mrs. Dorothy Peterson, 84 years old, missing $42,000 from her pension account. Mr. James Walker, 79, life savings reduced by 60%. Page after page of victims, mostly elderly people living alone with limited family oversight. This is horrible. It gets much worse. Lily opened her laptop and pulled up email conversations between Tyler and Carmen. Dad knew about all of this. He's been helping her cover her tracks in exchange for help accessing our money. The screen showed my son discussing how to hide stolen funds, how to create false digital trails, how to make elderly victims think their missing money was due to market fluctuations or poor investment choices. Your father helped her steal from other families.
He set up fake investment accounts to make the thefts look legitimate. He created false documents showing phantom losses. He even helped her identify which clients had the most money and the least family oversight. Lily's young voice carried a disgust that broke my heart. Dad didn't just betray us, Grandpa. He's been betraying innocent people for months. I pushed my breakfast away, my appetite completely gone. My son hadn't just stolen from his own family. He'd become a predator specifically targeting vulnerable elderly people who reminded me of my own friends and neighbors. How many victims? I've identified 23 so far, total losses of over $600,000. Lily closed the laptop and looked at me seriously. But I think I can help them get their money back. How? The same way I'm going to help us get ours back. She stood up and walked to our kitchen window, looking out at the morning sunshine like a general surveying a battlefield. Yesterday I focused on stopping them from doing more damage. Today I start the recovery process. Recovery process. My 12-year-old granddaughter was taking on the responsibility of seeking justice for multiple families, and she was doing it with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Lily, this is so much responsibility for someone your age. Age doesn't matter when you have the skills and the evidence. She sat back down and reopened her laptop. Besides, someone has to do it. These people trusted Carmen with their life savings. They trusted Dad to protect their investments. They deserved to know the truth. She pulled up what looked like a sophisticated spreadsheet with names, amounts, dates, and status updates. Mrs. Peterson doesn't even know her money is missing yet. Carmen has been sending her fake statements showing market gains while actually draining her account. Mr. Walker thinks he lost money in a bad investment, but really Carmen just transferred it to offshore accounts she controls. How will you contact them? Very carefully. I can't just call them and announce that their financial advisor is a criminal. I need to approach this properly, with evidence they can understand and verify independently. Lily clicked to another document. I'm going to send anonymous packages to each victim, complete documentation of what happened to their money, instructions for how to report the crimes, and contact information for legal aid services that specialize in elder financial abuse. Anonymous packages. My granddaughter was orchestrating a coordinated response to financial crime with the methodical precision of a trained investigator. I can't reveal who I am without compromising the ongoing investigation, but I can make sure each person gets the information they need to protect themselves and recover their losses. I watched Lily organize evidence against financial predators with the same careful attention she used for her school projects. What about us? Our money? That's more complicated because Dad had legal access to our accounts initially. But the fraudulent loans using our identities, that's clearly criminal. She pulled up another folder on her screen. I've already filed all the paperwork to dispute those loans. The investigation should take a few weeks, but we should be able to get that debt removed from our names. And our actual savings? Lily's expression grew more serious. That's going to take longer, but I can trace where the money went and prove it was transferred for criminal purposes. If Carmen goes to prison for the other thefts, we might be able to recover some of our losses through court-ordered restitution. If she goes to prison? Oh, she's definitely going to prison. Lily's voice carried absolute certainty. I have enough evidence to convict her 10 times over. The question is whether Dad will cooperate with authorities or go down with her. She closed her laptop and looked at me with those serious green eyes. Grandpa, I need you to understand something. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. When the police start investigating, when lawyers get involved, when this becomes public, people are going to ask questions about how a 12-year-old obtained all this evidence. What will you tell them? The truth. That Dad and Carmen were careless with their digital security, and I was smart enough to document their crimes before they could cover their tracks. She paused. But I need you to be prepared for people to be both impressed and concerned about what I can do with technology. Are you scared? Lily considered the question with the thoughtfulness that reminded me so much of Rebecca. No, I'm angry. And anger is much more useful than fear when you're fighting for your family. She stood up and gathered her school backpack. I should get to class. I have a biology test today and I still need to maintain my grades while I'm dismantling financial crime networks. The casual way she transitioned from discussing federal crimes to worrying about her biology test would have been funny if it weren't so surreal. Lily? She paused at the kitchen door. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast. I didn't grow up fast, Grandpa. I just discovered I was already grown up. She smiled, and for a moment she looked like the child I'd raised. Don't worry. We're going to be okay. And so are all the people Dad and Carmen hurt. After she left for school, I sat in my quiet kitchen surrounded by evidence of crimes I never could have imagined. My granddaughter was fighting a war I didn't fully understand, using weapons I couldn't even identify. But for the first time since Tyler walked out our door, I felt something besides fear and betrayal. I felt hope. 4 days later, I was sorting through bills at the kitchen table when the phone rang. The caller ID showed Tyler's number, and despite everything he'd done to us, my heart jumped. Hello, Dad. Tyler's voice was strained, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. We need to talk, right now. You want to talk now? Something's wrong. Everything's falling apart, and I think someone's targeting me and Carmen. His words came out in a panicked rush. Someone with serious technical skills who wants to destroy us. I glanced toward the stairs where Lily was supposedly doing homework. The soft clicking of computer keys drifted down from her room, just like every evening since Tyler left. What kind of targeting? My bank accounts are frozen. The police showed up at our hotel asking questions about identity theft. Carmen got fired from her job and now she's being investigated by the State Banking Commission. Tyler's breathing was becoming labored. Dad, someone knows everything. They have records of things that should be completely private. Maybe your private things weren't as private as you thought. This isn't a joke. Whoever's doing this, they have access to emails, bank records, even phone calls between me and Carmen. They sent her boss a complete file documenting every transaction she's ever made illegally. I felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. Lily had been busy. Tyler, maybe this is just consequences catching up with you. No, this is coordinated. This is someone with advanced computer skills who wants to systematically destroy us. His voice cracked with desperation. Dad, I think they might come after you and Lily next. You need to be careful. You need to protect yourselves. The irony was almost laughable. Tyler warning me to protect myself and Lily from the very person who was actually protecting us. Where are you staying? A hotel outside town. Carmen and I had to use cash because our credit cards have been canceled. Tyler paused. Dad, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you and Lily, but I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I was just going to borrow the money temporarily. Carmen had this investment opportunity that was guaranteed to triple our money within 8 months. We were going to pay everything back with interest and surprise you with extra. The same tired story criminals always told themselves. It was just borrowing. It was going to work out. Nobody was going to get hurt permanently. Tyler, you stole Lily's college fund. You used our identities to get loans. You helped that woman steal from elderly people. That's not borrowing, that's organized crime. I know, but Dad, listen to me carefully. Whoever's doing this to us, they're not just exposing what we did. They're actively hunting us. His voice rose with paranoia. Our car got repossessed yesterday. The apartment we were going to rent in Phoenix fell through because the landlord received an anonymous tip about our criminal background. Someone is systematically destroying every plan we make. Phoenix. So they'd settled on a destination after their original plans collapsed. Maybe you should turn yourself in. Turn myself in for what? Borrowing money from my own family? Taking out loans using family information? Tyler's desperation was morphing into anger. What we did might be morally questionable, but most of it isn't technically illegal. What about the elderly people your girlfriend stole from? The silence on Tyler's end stretched for almost 15 seconds. How do you know about that? The same way someone else knows about it. The same way the police know about it. the same way Carmen's former employer knows about it. I kept my voice steady though my heart was racing. Tyler, you didn't just betray your family. You helped that woman systematically steal from innocent people who trusted her with their life savings. I didn't. Tyler struggled with his words. Look, Carmen had some problems at her old job, but that was different. What we did with your money was just family business between relatives. Family business? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You abandoned your daughter and stole her future to run away with a career criminal. She's not a career criminal. She made some mistakes, but she's trying to start over. We both are. The clicking from upstairs stopped suddenly. A moment later, I heard Lily's bedroom door open and her quiet footsteps on the stairs. Tyler, I think you need to face reality. Your girlfriend is going to prison for financial crimes. You're probably going to prison for fraud and conspiracy. And Lily and I are going to rebuild our lives without you. Prison? Tyler's voice jumped an octave. Dad, nobody's going to prison. This is all just a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion by whoever's targeting us. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, moving silently to stand beside my chair. She held up her laptop screen, showing me what looked like a local news article. The headline read, Local financial advisor arrested in elaborate elderly fraud scheme. My breath caught in my throat. Tyler, you should probably check the news. Why? Your girlfriend was arrested this morning. The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a sob and a scream of rage. That's impossible. She was just here 20 minutes ago. We were planning our next move. Where is here? The Riverside Inn on Highway 6, room 127. Tyler's voice was becoming increasingly frantic. Dad, if they arrested Carmen, they're going to come for me next. I need help. I need money to get out of state before they can find me. Lily walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a notepad. She wrote something quickly and showed it to me. Keep him talking. Police are 2 minutes away. My heart nearly stopped. Lily had called the police while I was on the phone. Tyler, running isn't going to solve anything. Running is the only thing that's going to keep me out of federal prison. Tyler's breathing was becoming rapid and shallow. Dad, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm your son. You raised me. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for something when you were the son I raised. The person on this phone is a stranger who stole from his own child and abandoned his family for a criminal. A criminal? Dad, there should be more money than what you said. I didn't take everything. You took everything, Tyler. Our savings, Lily's college fund, even Rebecca's memorial account that I thought was sacred. My voice broke saying Rebecca's name. Everything she saved for Lily's future, gone. I can pay it back. Once this investigation blows over, I can get another job, make payments, fix everything I broke. How are you going to pay back money you helped steal from 23 elderly people? Silence. Tyler, how do you know the exact number of victims? Lily held up another note. Don't answer that question. I know because the evidence is public now. Police, lawyers, victims' families, the media. Everyone knows what you and Carmen did to innocent people. Someone's been feeding you information. Tyler's voice turned suspicious and paranoid. Dad, you barely know how to use email. How would you know about digital evidence and victim counts? Lily moved to the window and peered through the curtains. She held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. Maybe I'm not as helpless as you assumed. Dad, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Whoever's been helping you, whoever's been giving you this information, they're dangerous. They've systematically destroyed my life and Carmen's life, and they won't stop until... The line went quiet, except for muffled voices in the background. Dad? Tyler's voice was different now, defeated and scared. I have to go, the police are here. Through the phone, I could hear official voices, the metallic sound of handcuffs clicking, someone reading Miranda rights in that formal tone law enforcement uses. Tyler Bennett, you're under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit embezzlement, and elder financial abuse. The line went dead. Lily closed her laptop and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. Is it over? I asked. The arrests are over. The recovery process is just beginning. Lily's voice carried the same calm certainty I'd grown to recognize. But yes, Grandpa. The part where we were victims is over. Now we get to be survivors. I looked at my granddaughter, this remarkable child who'd systematically dismantled two adult criminals with nothing but intelligence, determination, and a laptop, and finally understood what had really happened. Tyler had spent days looking over his shoulder, paranoid about who was hunting him down. He'd been convinced some mysterious enemy was targeting him with advanced cyber warfare techniques. He never suspected that his own daughter had been watching him all along. The girl he'd abandoned without a second thought had become the architect of his downfall. Lily hadn't just protected us. She'd delivered justice to every family Tyler and Carmen had betrayed. And she'd done it all while maintaining perfect grades and never missing a day of school. My granddaughter had given Tyler exactly what he deserved. Consequences. Real family doesn't abandon each other when things get difficult. Real family doesn't steal futures to fund selfish dreams. But real family also doesn't let anyone hurt the people they love. Not even when that someone shares their DNA. 8 months later, I was reading in my favorite chair when Lily burst through the front door with more energy than I'd seen from her since before Tyler left. Grandpa, check this out. She dropped her backpack and pulled out an official-looking envelope. It's from the district attorney's office. I set down my book and took the letter. The state seal at the top made my heart race with anticipation and anxiety. Restitution payment notice, I read aloud, in the amount of $24,600. That's from Carmen's seized assets, Lily explained, practically bouncing on her feet with excitement. They liquidated her car, her jewelry, her designer clothes, even her fancy furniture. Plus, they recovered some money from offshore accounts she thought were hidden. $24,000. Not everything we'd lost, but enough to breathe again. Enough to start rebuilding Lily's college fund and our emergency savings. What about the other families? I asked. Mrs. Peterson got back $31,000, almost everything Carmen stole from her. Mr. Walker recovered his full amount because they caught the theft before she could move all his money overseas. Lily sat down across from me, her eyes bright with satisfaction. 23 families are getting substantial recoveries. Not everyone got everything back, but everyone got enough to stabilize their situations. I held the letter carefully, still hardly believing it was real. And your father? Lily's expression grew more serious. 7 years in federal prison. He pled guilty to multiple counts to avoid a longer sentence. She paused, studying my face. His lawyer says he might get out in 5.5 with good behavior. 5.5 years. Part of me felt relief that it wasn't longer. Part of me wondered if it was enough time for him to truly understand the devastation he'd caused. How do you feel about that? I asked. Lily considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. I feel like justice was served. Not revenge, just appropriate consequences for the choices he made. She pulled her laptop from her backpack. But Grandpa, I want to show you something else that's even more important than the restitution. The screen displayed what looked like a professional website. The header read, Guardian Angel Financial Protection, keeping families safe from financial predators. Lily, what is this? Remember how I said I wanted to help other families avoid what we went through? Well, I've been working on this project for the past 6 months. She clicked through different pages showing services, client testimonials, educational resources, and prevention strategies. The website was incredibly sophisticated, clearly designed, and completely professional. I've helped 18 families recover stolen money so far, and I've taught over 200 people how to protect themselves from financial fraud and elder abuse. At the bottom of the page, I saw the founder's information. L. Chen Bennett, Certified Financial Crime Prevention Specialist, Certified Digital Forensics Analyst. Certified by whom? I asked, amazed. I completed online certification programs through the International Association of Financial Crime Investigators and the Digital Forensics Certification Board. I passed both certification exams last month. Lily grinned with pride. I'm the youngest certified financial crime specialist in the country, and possibly the youngest digital forensics analyst in North America. I stared at my granddaughter, this extraordinary young woman who'd transformed our worst nightmare into a mission to protect others. Are you making money from this? Some. Enough to cover our household expenses and contribute significantly to rebuilding my college fund. She pulled up another page showing glowing testimonials from grateful clients. But honestly, Grandpa, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing it because I know exactly what it feels like when someone you should be able to trust betrays you completely. And I know what it feels like to fight back and actually win. A soft notification chimed from her laptop. Lily glanced at the screen, and her expression shifted into the focused professional demeanor I'd learned to recognize. I need to take this video call. It's a family in Oregon whose adult son has been systematically stealing his elderly mother's Social Security benefits and pension payments. The local police don't understand the digital component of the crime. She started to stand, then paused. Grandpa, are you proud of who I've become? The question caught me off guard. I looked at this remarkable young woman, still just 13 years old, but carrying herself with the confidence and competence of someone much older. She'd taken the worst experience of our lives and transformed it into a force for protecting other vulnerable families. Lily, I'm not just proud of you. I'm in awe of you. I reached for her hand. But more than that, I'm grateful. You didn't just save us from Dad's betrayal. You turned his betrayal into something that helps other people survive similar betrayals. She squeezed my hand, and for a moment she looked like the child I'd raised. Dad thought abandoning us would break us. Instead, it taught us who we really are and what we're capable of when we fight for each other. After she went upstairs to handle her client call, I sat in my quiet kitchen thinking about how much had changed. We'd moved to a cozy 2-bedroom apartment across town that felt more like home than our old house ever had. I'd returned to substitute teaching 3 days a week, not because we desperately needed the money anymore, but because I missed working with students and had stories to tell about resilience and recovery. Lily had grown 4 inches and developed the quiet confidence that comes from facing real danger and emerging victorious. She still maintained straight A's, still helped with dinner, still hugged me goodnight, but she also ran a business that protected families from financial predators. She spoke at community colleges about digital security. She consulted with law enforcement agencies about cybercrime prevention and elder fraud detection. My 13-year-old granddaughter had become someone I not only loved but genuinely admired and looked up to. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my stomach tighten. Cedar Falls Correctional Facility. Tyler. I stared at the ringing phone, remembering our last conversation. The desperation in his voice, the sound of handcuffs clicking, the moment his old life ended and his new reality began in a federal courtroom. The phone kept ringing. After 6 rings, it would go to voicemail. 5 rings, 6 rings, voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Cedar Falls Correctional Facility. I looked at the phone for a long moment, then reached over and turned off the ringer entirely. Some bridges, once burned by betrayal and criminal behavior, don't get rebuilt just because time has passed. Some forgiveness has to be earned through genuine change and accountability, not demanded through guilt and family obligation. And some consequences need to last exactly as long as they're supposed to last. Upstairs, I could hear Lily talking to her Oregon clients, her young voice steady and reassuring as she explained how to document financial abuse, protect vulnerable family members, and work with law enforcement to build criminal cases against financial predators. My granddaughter had learned that when someone hurts your family, you don't just survive the damage they cause. You make absolutely sure they can't hurt anyone else's family in the same way. I smiled and went back to my book, listening to the sound of justice being served one phone call at a time. But the story doesn't end there. 3 months later, something happened that would test everything Lily had built and learned. I was making breakfast on a Saturday morning when I heard an urgent knock at our apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in her 60s with silver hair and worried eyes, clutching a manila envelope. "Mr. Chen?" she asked when I opened the door. "I'm Dorothy Peterson. I think your granddaughter helped save my life savings." Mrs. Peterson, one of Carmen's victims. I invited her in, and she sat at our kitchen table with tears streaming down her face. "I got my money back, almost all of it, because of the evidence your Lily provided," she said. "But now I need her help with something else. Something much worse." She opened the envelope and pulled out documents that made my blood run cold. Bank statements, medical bills, legal papers. "My own son is trying to have me declared mentally incompetent so he can take control of my remaining finances," Mrs. Peterson explained. "He's been working with a lawyer and a doctor to build a case that I'm too confused to manage my own money. But I'm not confused, I'm just elderly and living alone." She looked up at me with desperate eyes. "He doesn't know that I know what he's planning. I found emails on his computer when I was visiting last week. They're going to have me evaluated by a psychiatrist they've already paid off, then petition the court for guardianship. Once they have legal control, they'll move me to a nursing home and liquidate everything I own." My heart broke for this sweet woman who'd already survived one financial predator, only to discover that her own son was planning an even more devastating betrayal. "Mrs. Peterson, this is elder abuse of the worst kind." "I know, but I'm 84 years old and everyone assumes I'm too old to understand what's happening to me." She wiped her eyes. "I need someone young and smart enough to help me fight back before it's too late. Someone like your Lily." Just then, Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas but instantly alert. "Mrs. Peterson, what's wrong?" For the next hour, Lily listened intently as Mrs. Peterson explained the conspiracy against her. She took notes, asked detailed questions, and examined every document with the same methodical precision she'd used to build the case against Tyler and Carmen. "This is definitely criminal," Lily said finally. "Conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, attempted theft by deception. But it's also more complex because your son is using the legal system as a weapon against you." She opened her laptop and began typing rapidly. "Mrs. Peterson, I can help you, but this is going to require a different approach than what I did with Carmen and my father. We need to work within the system to expose their conspiracy before they can execute it. Can you really stop them?" Lily looked at Mrs. Peterson with the same calm confidence I'd learned to trust completely. "Mrs. Peterson, they're counting on you being helpless and alone. But you're not alone anymore. And I've learned that the best way to stop people who prey on families is to make sure their plans backfire spectacularly." She turned her laptop around to show Mrs. Peterson a detailed plan. "Here's what we're going to do." Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Lily orchestrate one of the most sophisticated investigations I'd ever seen. She helped Mrs. Peterson install hidden cameras in her home to record her son's visits and conversations. She taught her how to document every interaction with the corrupt doctor and lawyer. She even arranged for Mrs. Peterson to undergo an independent psychological evaluation that proved her mental competency beyond any doubt. But Lily's masterstroke was discovering that the lawyer her son was working with had been running similar guardianship scams against other elderly clients. She found a pattern of suspicious cases where healthy seniors were suddenly declared incompetent, their assets liquidated, and their families mysteriously enriched. The day before Mrs. Peterson's son was scheduled to file his guardianship petition, Lily helped her file criminal complaints against all 3 conspirators, with evidence so comprehensive that the district attorney's office opened an immediate investigation. Mrs. Peterson's son was arrested before he could even enter the courthouse. The corrupt lawyer lost his license and faced federal charges for running an organized elder abuse ring. The doctor who'd agreed to provide false testimony about Mrs. Peterson's mental capacity was suspended and investigated by the state medical board. "How did you know to look for the pattern with other cases?" I asked Lily after Mrs. Peterson called to thank us with tears of joy. "Because predators rarely stop with one victim," Lily explained. "Dad and Carmen weren't satisfied stealing just from us. They had to steal from dozens of other families too. Mrs. Peterson's son and his lawyer weren't planning to stop with her. They were building a business model around exploiting vulnerable elderly people. She closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. Grandpa, this is what I want to do with my life. Not just help individual families recover from financial crimes, but identify and stop the people who make careers out of hurting vulnerable people. You mean like law enforcement? Better than law enforcement. I want to work independently, using technology and investigation skills to expose predators before they can destroy families. Lily's eyes shone with purpose. I want to be the person that criminals like Dad and Carmen are afraid of. The person they know is watching them, documenting their crimes, ready to make sure they face consequences. 6 months later, Lily's guardian angel financial protection had helped 47 families recover stolen money and prevented 12 attempted scams from succeeding. She'd consulted with FBI investigators on 3 major elder fraud cases. She'd testified before the state legislature about gaps in financial crime prevention. And she was still only 13 years old. One evening I found her working at the kitchen table, surrounded by case files and legal documents. She looked up when I sat down beside her. Grandpa, do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dad hadn't abandoned us? The question surprised me. What do you mean? If he'd stayed and we'd never discovered what he and Carmen were doing, how many more families would they have destroyed? Lily set down her pen and looked at me thoughtfully. Mrs. Peterson, the Walkers, Mrs. Miller, all those other elderly people who trusted Carmen with their life savings. I considered this. You think your father leaving was actually a good thing? Not good exactly, but necessary. Lily organized her papers into neat stacks. Dad thought abandoning us was the worst thing he could do to our family, but really, it was the best thing he could have done for dozens of other families. She stood up and walked to our window, looking out at the city lights like a guardian watching over sleeping families. Because he abandoned us, I learned how to fight back. Because I learned how to fight back, I could help other people fight back too. Lily turned back to me with a small smile. Dad tried to destroy our family to save himself. Instead, he destroyed himself and saved a lot of other families. I looked at my remarkable granddaughter. This young woman who'd transformed personal betrayal into a mission to protect others, and realized she was absolutely right. Tyler's abandonment had been the catalyst that revealed who we really were underneath the comfortable assumptions of family loyalty. It had forced us to discover strengths we never knew we possessed and fight battles we never wanted to fight. But most importantly, it had taught us that real family isn't defined by blood or obligation. Real family is defined by who stands with you when everything falls apart, who fights for you when you can't fight for yourself, and who makes sure that the people who hurt you can never hurt anyone else the same way. Tyler had tried to steal our future to fund his selfish dreams. Instead, he'd given us a purpose that would protect futures for families we'd never even met. And that, I realized, was a kind of justice more perfect than any prison sentence could ever provide. The last I heard, Tyler was still in federal prison, probably wondering who had systematically destroyed his carefully laid plans with such devastating precision. He still doesn't know it was his own daughter. The daughter he thought was too young and helpless to matter. The daughter who turned out to be the most dangerous enemy a financial predator could ever face. And every day Lily continues her work, protecting families from people exactly like the father who abandoned her. Because that's what real family does. Real family doesn't just survive betrayal. Real family makes sure betrayal has consequences. 3 months after the FBI visit, our lives had settled into a routine that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Lily was not only maintaining straight A's in school, but had also been accepted into an advanced cybersecurity program at the local community college, where she took evening classes twice a week. Her guardian angel financial protection business was thriving, with a steady stream of families seeking help with financial fraud cases. But the most significant change was in me. For the first time since my wife died, I felt like I had a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. I'd started volunteering at a senior center, teaching elderly people about digital security and financial protection. Lily had developed a curriculum specifically for seniors, and I'd become her primary instructor for in-person workshops. "Mr. Chen, you've given me tools I never knew I needed," said Harold Martinez, an 82-year-old widower who'd attended my last workshop. "My grandson keeps trying to help me with computer stuff, but he talks too fast and uses words I don't understand. You explain things in a way that makes sense." These workshops had become one of the most rewarding parts of my week. Teaching seniors how to protect themselves from the kind of predators who'd targeted our family gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since retiring from classroom teaching. But it was during one of these workshops that we encountered our next major challenge. Eleanor Washington was 78 years old, impeccably dressed, and clearly intelligent, despite her admitted confusion about technology. She'd attended 3 of my workshops, always sitting in the front row, taking careful notes, asking thoughtful questions. After the 4th workshop, she approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Chen, I think someone is stealing from me, but I can't prove it, and my family thinks I'm being paranoid." She pulled out a manila folder thick with bank statements, medical bills, and correspondence from various businesses. "My nephew Jerome has been helping me manage my finances since my husband died 2 years ago. He has power of attorney to pay my bills and handle my investments. But lately, things don't add up." I invited Eleanor to sit down in the empty classroom, and she spread her documents across the table. My monthly statements show transactions I don't remember authorizing. Money being moved between accounts for reasons Jerome says are tax purposes or investment opportunities. Bills being paid to companies I've never heard of. I looked through the documents, and even with my limited financial knowledge, I could see irregularities that seemed suspicious. "Have you talked to Jerome about your concerns?" I tried. He gets frustrated and tells me I'm confused because of my age. He says the transactions are all legitimate, and that I should trust him to handle everything. Eleanor wiped her eyes with a tissue. "But Mr. Chen, I'm not confused. I taught mathematics for 40 years. I understand numbers, and these numbers don't make sense. What about other family members? Jerome is my only living relative. My husband and I never had children, and Jerome is my late brother's son. When I expressed concerns to some friends, they suggested maybe Jerome was right. Maybe I was just confused about modern financial management." This was a classic elder abuse scenario. A trusted family member with legal authority systematically stealing from an elderly relative while gaslighting them about their own competence. "Eleanor, would you be willing to let my granddaughter take a look at these documents? She's very good at identifying financial irregularities." That evening, I showed Eleanor's documents to Lily. She studied them for less than 10 minutes before looking up with that expression I'd learned to recognize as controlled anger. "Jerome Washington has stolen at least $150,000 from his aunt over the past 18 months, Lily said flatly, "and he's accelerating the theft because he thinks she's too old and isolated to stop him." She pointed to specific transactions on the bank statements. "These investment transfers are actually moving money to accounts he controls personally. These tax payments are going to a fake business he created. These medical expenses are for services Eleanor never received." "How can you tell?" "Because he's using the same techniques Carmen used, just more gradually and with legal authority to make it harder to detect." Lily opened her laptop and began typing. But he made the same mistake most family member thieves make. He kept detailed records because he thought Eleanor would never be smart enough to understand them. She showed me a spreadsheet she'd created tracking all of Eleanor's suspicious transactions over the past 2 years. Jerome has been systematically transferring Eleanor's assets to himself while maintaining just enough money in her accounts to pay her basic living expenses. At his current rate of theft, she'll be completely broke within 8 months. What can we do? We can stop him the same way we stopped Dad and Carmen. But Eleanor's situation is more complicated because Jerome has legal power of attorney, which gives him legitimate authority to manage her finances. Lily was quiet for a moment, thinking through the strategic challenges. We need to prove that Jerome is abusing his power of attorney for personal benefit rather than Eleanor's welfare. And we need to do it quickly before he figures out that Eleanor is getting outside help. Over the next 2 weeks, Lily and I worked with Eleanor to document Jerome's theft comprehensively. Eleanor proved to be an excellent partner in the investigation. Her mathematical background made her capable of understanding complex financial analysis, and her 40 years of teaching experience had given her excellent organizational skills. "I feel so stupid for trusting him," Eleanor said one afternoon as we reviewed evidence of Jerome's crimes. "You're not stupid," I assured her. "You trusted your family member to act in your best interests. That's what normal people do. The fact that he violated that trust doesn't reflect on your judgment." Lily looked up from her computer. "Eleanor, criminals like Jerome count on their victims feeling ashamed and stupid. That shame prevents people from seeking help or reporting crimes. But you didn't do anything wrong by trusting your nephew. He did something wrong by betraying your trust." Eleanor smiled for the first time since we'd started working together. "Your granddaughter is very wise for such a young person. She's had to learn wisdom faster than most kids," I replied. The evidence against Jerome was overwhelming, but Lily wanted to gather additional proof of his criminal intent before we approached law enforcement. Family financial abuse cases can be difficult to prosecute because the abuser often has legal authority to manage the victim's money, Lily explained. "We need to prove that Jerome knew he was stealing, rather than just making poor financial decisions on Eleanor's behalf." Her solution was elegant and devastating. She helped Eleanor create a fake investment opportunity that would be irresistible to someone looking to steal money quickly. Eleanor mentioned to Jerome that she'd received information about a time-sensitive investment that could double her money in 6 months. Jerome's reaction was immediate and incriminating. Within 3 days, he'd transferred $40,000 from Eleanor's account to invest in the fake opportunity, without consulting Eleanor or providing any documentation about the investment terms. "He didn't investigate the investment at all," Lily observed as she showed Eleanor records of Jerome's transactions. "He just saw an opportunity to steal a large amount quickly and took it. That proves criminal intent rather than poor judgment." But Lily's trap went even further. The fake investment company sent Jerome official-looking documents requiring his signature on forms that explicitly stated he was using his aunt's money for personal benefit rather than her welfare. Jerome signed and returned the documents without reading them carefully. Now we have his written confession that he's knowingly abusing his power of attorney for personal gain," Lily said with satisfaction. Eleanor's case concluded faster than any of Lily's previous investigations. Once presented with comprehensive evidence of Jerome's theft and his signed confession of criminal intent, the district attorney's office immediately froze all of Jerome's accounts, revoked his power of attorney, and charged him with elder financial abuse, fraud, and theft. Jerome Washington was arrested at his workplace 3 days later. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about the case, focusing on Eleanor's courage in coming forward and the sophisticated methods used to document the crimes. Again, no mention was made of a 13-year-old mastermind behind the investigation. "I got almost all my money back," Eleanor told us 2 months later, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. "But more than that, I got my confidence back. Jerome had convinced me I was too old and confused to manage my own life. You both showed me that age doesn't make someone helpless." Eleanor's case was significant for another reason. It established a pattern in Lily's work that would define her future career. She wasn't just solving individual cases anymore. She was developing systematic approaches to identifying and stopping different types of financial crimes. "Each case teaches me something that helps with the next case," Lily explained one evening as she updated her case files. "Dad and Carmen taught me about romantic fraud and identity theft. The Golden Years group taught me about organized criminal networks. Eleanor's case taught me about family member abuse and power of attorney fraud." She pulled up a document on her laptop that looked like a comprehensive manual. "I'm creating a database of criminal patterns, investigation techniques, and prevention strategies. Every case adds to our knowledge base and makes us more effective at protecting future victims." Our knowledge base. I noticed Lily had started referring to her work as something we were doing together, rather than something she was doing alone. "What's our next case?" I asked. Actually, our next case found us. Lily opened an email attachment. This came in yesterday through the Guardian Angel website. It's from a woman in Portland whose elderly mother is being pressured to change her will by a caregiver she hired 6 months ago. The email described a situation that was becoming increasingly common. Professional caregivers who gained the trust of elderly clients, then manipulated them into changing legal documents to benefit the caregiver financially. Patricia Kellner hired Maria Santos to provide companionship and light housekeeping for her 89-year-old mother, Dorothy. But over the past few months, Maria has been isolating Dorothy from her family, convincing her that her daughter doesn't really care about her and suggesting that Dorothy should reward the people who actually take care of her in her will. I felt a familiar chill reading about another vulnerable elderly person being systematically manipulated. Patricia tried to address her concerns with Maria directly, but Maria convinced Dorothy that her daughter was just trying to control her money. Now, Dorothy won't take Patricia's phone calls, and Maria won't allow unsupervised visits. This is psychological manipulation combined with financial exploitation, Lily observed. And it's happening in another state, which makes it more complex than our previous cases. Can we help from here? We can try. But this case will require a different approach because we can't work directly with Dorothy. She's been turned against her own family. We'll have to work through Patricia and gather evidence remotely. Over the following weeks, Lily developed what she called a remote intervention strategy for cases where the victim had been psychologically manipulated to reject help from family members. She helped Patricia document Maria's behavior patterns, research Maria's background, and identify legal options for protecting Dorothy from exploitation. The investigation revealed that Maria Santos had worked as a caregiver for several elderly people over the past 5 years, and in each case she'd been named as a beneficiary in their wills shortly before they died. Maria isn't just stealing from Dorothy, Lily told me grimly. She's been running this same scam repeatedly. She targets elderly people who are socially isolated, gains their trust, turns them against their families, then inherits their assets when they die. How many victims? At least 7 over the past 5 years. Total inheritance value of over $800,000. Lily showed me obituaries and will documents she'd tracked down through public records. And in each case, the elderly person died within 12 to 18 months of changing their will to benefit Maria. The pattern was chilling. Maria would identify vulnerable elderly people, isolate them from family support, manipulate them into changing legal documents, then somehow accelerate their deaths to inherit their assets quickly. "Are we talking about murder?" I whispered. "I think we're talking about systematic medical neglect designed to hasten death," Lily replied. Maria convinces her victims to fire their regular doctors and switch to healthcare providers she recommends. Then she manages their medications and medical care in ways that gradually undermine their health. She pulled up medical records she'd obtained through Patricia's research. Dorothy's health has declined significantly since Maria became her caregiver. She's become confused, weak, and dependent in ways that aren't consistent with normal aging progression. This is beyond financial fraud. This is serial killing for profit. Which means we need to involve law enforcement immediately, not spend months gathering evidence first. Lily was already typing as she spoke. "I'm contacting the Portland Police Department's Elder Abuse Unit and the Oregon State Attorney General's office right now." But even as law enforcement became involved, Lily continued her own investigation. She'd learned that official investigations could move slowly, and Dorothy might not survive long enough for the legal system to protect her. "Patricia, I need you to do something that might seem strange," Lily said during a video call with Dorothy's daughter. "I need you to accidentally run into Maria at a coffee shop or grocery store and start a conversation about caregiving." "Why?" "Because I want to record that conversation. If Maria is as manipulative as I think she is, she won't be able to resist boasting about how much her clients trust her and how grateful they are for her care. Criminals like this often can't help revealing their methods when they think they're talking to someone who admires their work." Patricia's accidental encounter with Maria produced exactly the evidence Lily had hoped for. Maria spent 20 minutes describing how she'd helped Dorothy see the truth about her ungrateful daughter, how she'd found Dorothy much better doctors who understood elderly care, and how Dorothy had become like family to her. "Dorothy tells me I'm the daughter she never had," Maria said on the recording Patricia made. "She's so grateful for everything I do for her. She says I deserve to be rewarded for my loyalty, unlike some people who only call when they want something." But the most damning part of the recording came when Maria described her previous clients. "I've been blessed to care for several wonderful elderly people over the years. They all became like family to me too. It's so sad that they're all gone now, but I'm grateful they remembered me in their wills. It helps me continue doing this work for other people who need care." Maria had essentially confessed to systematically inheriting from multiple elderly clients while describing their deaths as natural occurrences she'd somehow predicted and prepared for financially. The Portland Police Department moved quickly once they heard Maria's recorded statements. She was arrested and charged with elder abuse, fraud, and suspicion of murder in connection with the deaths of her previous clients. Dorothy was removed from Maria's care and hospitalized for medical evaluation. Doctors discovered she'd been systematically over-medicated with drugs that caused confusion and weakness, while being denied medication she actually needed for legitimate health conditions. "Dorothy is going to recover," Patricia told us 3 weeks later. "The doctors say once the wrong medications clear her system, and she starts receiving proper care, she should regain most of her cognitive function and physical strength." "What about her will?" "She's already changed it back. As soon as the medication fog lifted, she remembered how much she loves our family, and how angry she was that Maria had tried to turn her against us." Patricia's voice was thick with emotion. "She wants to thank you and Lily personally for saving her life." Maria Santos eventually pled guilty to multiple counts of elder abuse and fraud. The investigation into her previous clients' deaths was ongoing, but Dorothy was alive and reunited with her family. "This case taught me something important," Lily said as we updated her criminal patterns database. "Financial predators often escalate their crimes over time. They start with simple theft, but if they're successful, they become more ambitious and dangerous. Maria started by stealing money, but eventually she was willing to kill people to get their assets faster. What does that mean for future cases? It means we need to intervene earlier, before predators have time to escalate their methods. And it means we need to be prepared for cases that go beyond financial crimes into physical danger for victims." Lily was evolving from a financial fraud investigator into something broader, a protector of vulnerable people from all forms of exploitation. As I watched her work, I realized that Tyler's abandonment had created something he never could have intended. He'd thought he was escaping responsibility for his family. Instead, he'd created a young woman who took responsibility for protecting families she'd never met from criminals she'd never encountered. And she was just getting started. The next morning brought our biggest challenge yet. Lily came downstairs for breakfast, carrying a thick manila folder, and wearing the expression I'd learned meant she'd discovered something that was going to change everything. "Grandpa, we need to talk about something serious," she said, setting the folder on our kitchen table. "I've been analyzing patterns in all the cases we've worked on, and I've discovered something disturbing." She opened the folder to reveal what looked like a complex organizational chart with dozens of photographs, names, and connecting lines. "All of our cases are connected. Dad and Carmen, the Golden Years Group, Jerome Washington, Maria Santos. They're not isolated criminals working independently. They're part of a much larger network of people who specialize in exploiting vulnerable populations." I felt the familiar dread that came with Lily's major discoveries. "What kind of network?" "A criminal consortium that operates across multiple states, targeting different vulnerable populations with coordinated strategies. They share victim information, money laundering techniques, even corrupt professional contacts like doctors and lawyers." She pointed to connections on her chart that I couldn't have seen without her analysis. Carmen Rodriguez didn't just happen to move to Cedar Falls and get hired at Premier Trust Financial. She was recruited specifically because this area had elderly populations that fit their target profiles. Jerome Washington didn't just happen to gain power of attorney over Eleanor. He was coached by someone who taught him exactly how to gradually steal from elderly relatives without getting caught. And Maria Santos? Maria was trained by the same organization that taught the Golden Years Group how to identify and isolate elderly victims. Look at this. Lily showed me training materials she'd discovered during her investigations. They have manuals for different types of elder exploitation: financial fraud, caregiver manipulation, family member theft, even murder for inheritance. The scope of what she was describing was overwhelming. Not just individual criminals, but a coordinated criminal enterprise that provided training, resources, and support for people who wanted to make careers out of exploiting vulnerable populations. How many people are involved? I've identified at least 40 active members across 12 states, but I think the actual network is much larger. They're organized like a business, with specializations and hierarchies and territorial assignments. Lily pulled out another document that looked like a corporate organizational chart. They have recruiters who identify potential new criminals, trainers who teach specific exploitation techniques, coordinators who match criminals with target populations, money laundering specialists who help hide stolen assets, even legal advisors who help criminals avoid prosecution. This is something the FBI needs to handle. I agree. But first, I need to understand how extensive the network is and identify all their current operations. Because if we only expose part of it, the rest will adapt their methods and become harder to catch. Lily opened her laptop and pulled up a map of the United States dotted with red pins. Based on the patterns I've identified, I think they're operating in at least 20 states, with active cases targeting hundreds of vulnerable people right now. Elderly people being stolen from by relatives, seniors being manipulated by caregivers, disabled adults being exploited by service providers, even foster children being trafficked for profit. The magnitude of human suffering represented by those red pins was staggering. How long will it take to investigate something this large? If I work alone, probably 2 years to map the full network and gather enough evidence for comprehensive prosecutions. Lily looked at me seriously. But Grandpa, I don't think I should work alone anymore. This is too big and too dangerous for one person to handle. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to call Agent Torres and accept her offer to work with the FBI. Not as a future career, but as a current consultant on this investigation. The idea of Lily officially joining an FBI investigation was both thrilling and terrifying. She'd be working with trained professionals, with official authority and resources. But she'd also be putting herself directly in the path of criminals who'd already shown they were willing to kill people who threatened their operations. Are you sure you're ready for that level of responsibility and danger? Lily closed her laptop and looked at me with those serious green eyes that reminded me so much of Rebecca. Grandpa, I've been carrying this level of responsibility for months already. The only difference would be having backup and support instead of doing it alone. She paused. And honestly, after what we learned about Maria Santos and how close Dorothy came to being murdered, I think working alone is actually more dangerous than working with law enforcement. She was right. The criminals we were dealing with had escalated from theft to murder. If they ever figured out who was exposing their operations, they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate the threat. That afternoon, Lily called Agent Torres. Agent Torres, this is Lily Chen. I have information about a criminal network that's much larger than the Golden Years Group, and I think it's time for us to work together officially. And that's how my 13-year-old granddaughter became the youngest consultant in FBI history, leading an investigation that would ultimately expose a criminal network responsible for stealing over $50 million from vulnerable people across 23 states. But that's a story for another day. For now, what matters is this. When Tyler walked out of our house with his suitcases, he thought he was escaping a life that had become too small for his ambitions. He had no idea he was creating someone whose ambitions would be large enough to protect thousands of families from criminals exactly like him. And every day, as Lily continues her work with the FBI, I remember something she told me during those first difficult weeks after Tyler left. Real family doesn't abandon each other when things get difficult. But real family also doesn't let anyone hurt the people they love. Not even when that someone shares their DNA. Tyler tried to destroy our family to save himself. Instead, he destroyed himself and saved countless other families. And that, I've learned, is what real justice looks like. So that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you believe a 12-year-old could really accomplish everything Lily did? Have you ever had to fight back against someone you trusted? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who discovered they were capable of extraordinary things when their families were threatened. Because sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest power, and sometimes the people who try to break us end up making us stronger than we ever imagined we could be.